We're over ready.
Okay, that is on. Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Global Film Exhibition. Today, we will be doing a class on film funding with Miss Joanne Butcher. Take it, take it away, Joanne.
Steve, I think you were going to do the bio. You were going to do a little intro and read my bio.
Well, how about I just let the folks know about you and we get playing it.
I'm going to read it then.
Okay.
It just helps me settle in. All right, I'm going to read about myself. My name is Joanne Butcher. I'm a consulting producer with over 180 films and series in various stages of development and 21 features in distribution. I have a brand new book. Oh, I can show you my book. I have a brand new book, Getting Your Film Funded, Produced and Distributed Globally, a 7-step system, the film box office success formula. With a wealth of experience in fundraising and distribution, Joanne has a proven track record of facilitating the sale of numerous feature films and participating in the distribution of 21 features. As an expert in fundraising, Joanne has supported her clients through various channels, including, and this is really a lot about what we're going to be talking about today, including major donors, grants, foundations, corporate sponsors, and over 40 successful crowdfunding campaigns. She's a newly published author with her book, Getting Your Film, I just said that, funded, produced, and distributed globally. The book gives you the tools to make your film a success through Joanne's experience working with filmmakers and the steps she takes her clients through with their films. The book is currently for sale on Amazon. Her involvement with organizations such as Brown Girls Doc Mafia, Slam Dance, the Brazilian Film Festival in Miami, and the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival have made her an integral part of the film community. As a founder of Unstoppable, a disability film festival, and a frequent judge at the Forever Foundation, Joanne has been dedicated to mentoring and developing the careers of young and not so young creatives. Joanne's experience extends beyond fundraising and distribution, as she has directed a first-run cinema and film school in Miami Beach, Florida, where she created the Florida Feature Film Competition. The competition has provided filmmakers with a platform to uplevel their business and marketing packages while competing for a $200,000 prize. Joanne's specialty lies in helping filmmakers raise funds to get their projects made and distributed globally. Her extensive network and expertise in the film industry make her the go-to consultant for independent filmmakers seeking support with fundraising and distribution. So that's a bit about me and some of the things I've done. If I look back, I've been working as a coach with filmmakers for about 7 years. And part of my story is that before that, I spent 7 years in bed, too sick to work. And that was a very clarifying experience, let me say. So it's interesting that I am somebody who was disabled and is now no longer disabled. But years before that, when I ran this cinema and this film school, I was always fundraising because I had to fundraise to run this nonprofit. It was a $500,000 a year nonprofit, and we had full-time staff. As I said, we ran a cinema. We were open 364 days a year. We did close on Christmas Day, and we were a first-run cinema. And so, what a first-run cinema is a cinema that is showing movies when they very first come out. And we were part of the box office reporting, which today, it wasn't back then as popular, but today, it's perfectly common for people in the street, not necessarily filmmakers, to know how much box office films have made. And so a first-run cinema is part of that box office numbers system. We had to report our Friday box office into the distributor. We had to report our Saturday and Sunday box office on Monday mornings. They were always grabbing for that weekend box office, and then, you know, for the rest of the week. So we were a first-run cinema, and what that meant was that we dealt with distributors all the time, and distributors were trying to get us to show their films. And we were a very small cinema. We had 79 seats. We lied to the distributors, and we told them we had 100 seats because otherwise they wouldn't have done business with us. And we dealt with all of the what eventually became the kind of independent distributors, Lionsgate, Cowboy Pictures. These were all the kinds of companies that we would deal with on a regular basis. And so I ran the cinema. We also had a film school. We eventually became IFP Miami, part of a network of a national network of media organizations that supported independent filmmakers. And when I finally left that organization, it was only a couple of years later before I became too sick to work. And what finally brought me back from my kind of being on my deathbed, is kind of like this was that I had the realization that I had something to offer filmmakers. And what that was that I had originally been a writer. I taught screenwriting. And so I realized that the line that a filmmaker has to follow from script, or if you're making documentaries, you know, a concept, and a documentary project doesn't always have a script, but anyway, from concept to script to production, post-production, those are the pieces often filmmakers know about. But the next part is distribution, exhibition, marketing, and the industry term for this is butts in seats, so selling tickets. So I realized that there are very, very few people in the industry who actually know that entire sequence and know how to go through that entire through line from script all the way to butts in seats. And that I could offer that to filmmakers because I had both sides of the equation. When I say both sides of the equation, what I mean is that usually nonprofit organizations, and I'm thinking about film schools, film festivals, film education, they are all involved in the script to post-production side of the equation. And they tend to not know how the industry works. They tend to not know about distribution, exhibition, marketing, and those things. On the other side, the industry is only interested in distribution, exhibition, marketing, selling tickets. That's all they're interested in. And they don't have the time to engage in educating filmmakers. So I realized that I was unusual in that I had all the different, both ends of that equation. And so now that's what I teach. And I teach regularly. Thank you to Stephen for having me here today to teach. And what I'm always really focused on with filmmakers is once we can understand how the business works, it gives us better opportunities to raise money. So to explain what I mean by that is that most filmmakers I meet, they'll tell me, well, I want to find investors or I want to find donors, and I'm going to make my film. And when my film is finished, I'm going to get it into a film festival. And what they don't understand is that if you're speaking to an investor or even a donor, that getting it into a film festival is not a very satisfying outcome. And so filmmakers know, as I said, it's that nonprofit side of the equation. They know about film festivals, but they don't know about the business side of how to get distribution and how to actually make money on their films. So I talk about this all the time, and just recently, it's so cool. I have somebody who listens to me all the time in Africa, in Mozambique. And he wrote to me and he said, "Oh my gosh, I read your book, Joanne, and it's changed my life." And he had this list of things that he had, beliefs he had that turned out from reading my book that were not correct. And one of them was, he was so excited that he had made his first film, and he didn't realize that because that film was a short film, that film was not going to make him money. It was not going to enter him into the business of film. It was not going to enter him into the film industry. And so he was really shocked when he read my book and realized that actually he needs to make a feature film. And, you know, he wasn't bitter. He wasn't resentful. He was just like, "Oh, thank you for letting me know. I have to make a feature film if I want to enter the industry, if I want to get into the business of filmmaking." Another thing is that when I work with my clients, I guarantee or I facilitate distribution for all my clients' films. And so because when my clients work with me and before they make their film, they know already that they have distribution for their films, it makes a big difference when they're speaking to investors, because now they can comfortably say, truthfully say to an investor, "I have distribution for my film." And for an investor, what happens often when a filmmaker speaks to an investor, and in fact, this is really when a filmmaker speaks to anyone in the industry, if anyone in the industry will actually speak to you, which is rare because people in the industry don't like speaking to filmmakers, and I'll talk about that. But when a filmmaker speaks to an investor, when they don't know the business side of that equation, they'll tend to tell their story. They'll say, "Oh, you know, I have a film and it's about this, 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 and this, and it's a story of this and this." And the investor looks at them blankly. So they tell more of their story or they raise their voice. They raise their voice and tell their story louder. But that's because the investor is looking at them blankly, because the investor is wanting to hear about the business. They're wanting to hear, well, how much is this going to cost and how much is it going to make? Many, many years ago, I met a guy who was very wealthy. And I said to him, "Well, how do you get to be rich?" And he said, "Well, you make a widget for 50 cents and you sell it for $1. And so using that business principle of making something for 50 cents and selling it for $1, how can we as filmmakers actually speak to investors and speak to them about how that investor is going to make a return on investment on the film? So this is sort of a fundamental piece, I think, that's really important for filmmakers to think about and to consider when they're making their films. How do I make a film where I can show the investor that it's going to cost 50 cents, but it's going to make $1? Hi, Feline. Nice to see you. Now often when filmmakers come and they work with me, they'll say, "Well, I don't know any investors. How do I get to meet investors?" And I think that one of the things that I'm always very interested in teaching is that if you have an interesting business proposition to offer, you will find people and you will meet people who will be interested. And what I mean by that is that when you're still a filmmaker saying, "I'm going to make a short," or you're still a filmmaker saying, "I'm going to make a feature film and get it into a film festival," you're still not offering an interesting business opportunity. But if you can say, "I'm making a film, it's going to make money," you're going to find people who are going to be interested and say, "Oh, really? You know, film is a very sexy industry. that people want to be involved in. It's just that most filmmakers are not able to really speak about it in a business sense. So once you can speak about it in a business sense, you're going to have a much more interesting offer that you can make to investors, and you will start to see that you'll meet people everywhere. And that's why when you hear people talk about, oh, dentists and doctors are good investors in films, it's because you're chatting to your dentist, you're chatting to your doctor, and you can tell them about your film and about what a good business that could be to be involved in. Investors are everywhere. So today, this class that I'm teaching is called 7 Types of Fundraising. It's one of my favorite classes to teach. There's a whole couple of chapters in my book on these 7 types of fundraising. And often, one of the things that investors want to see is they want to see that something is already in process with your film. They don't want to hear, oh, I have an idea for a film. They want to see that you've already moved along. I like to use the phrase, the train has left the station. A lot of times what I'm working on with my clients is to get that train out of the station, so that the train stopped in the station is the idea, is the concept. I often have people write to me, oh, I have an idea. So how do we go from having an idea to having a project that's actually up and running and is going and is starting to get exciting for people to invest in or to give to? So what I like to talk about is how I teach 7 different ways of fundraising. There may very well be more, but I teach 7 different ways of fundraising so that you can actually get your movie started, get it up and running, and get it going so that it starts to get exciting to people. Actually, I was talking to one of my clients yesterday. She won a grant for $1.3 million to make a feature film. And they got the first tranche of money, which was $65,000. That was for the script. So she actually paid herself for her script, which is really nice. And now they're working on the second tranche, which is $300,000 for pre-production. That's right, $300,000 for pre-production. And we were talking yesterday, and the last time I talked to her was before the holidays, right? Maybe the 17th, 18th, 19th of December or something. And in this time, in this month, I would say, a month has gone by, and she had all these updates for me that were completely new. She had this producer and that distributor and this distributor and that, and it's just because that train is moving, and as it gets moving, people want to jump on board. So what is it possible to do for anybody here to actually get the film going? And so the first type of fundraising, I have a PDF of this that I'll see if Stephen can facilitate me sending to you all. But, oh, look, somebody wrote to me in the chat. Investors want to know you did some of the work already. Yes, Donald, that's exactly right. So the first type of fundraising that I want to talk about is donors, individuals. And individuals are actually the most common way for anybody, anywhere, in any field to raise money. And what I mean by that is, if we don't just look at film, if we look at social services, if we look at animal welfare, child welfare, what else might there be? Homelessness, in the environment. So any field that people give money to, individuals are the most, give the highest percentage. The number is something like 86% of all money given, all money ever donated in America is given by individuals. And I find that this is really a great way for filmmakers to start thinking about bringing in money for their films. And I divide individuals into two types of donors. So the first type, there's nothing high tech about this, is small donors. And you know, in the past, we used to do things like raffles. We used to do things like bake sales. This was all the, I actually got fired from a job once. I got fired from a consulting gig, and I'd been brought in to train the board in fundraising. So I was training the board in fundraising. And when they fired me, they sent me a letter and they said, you know, you wanted us to talk to people about money, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted you to put something together like a raffle. I was gonna actually frame this letter. I thought it was so good. We thought we wanted you to put something together like a raffle. But people don't do raffles anymore. So in our world today, in the 21st century, if we want to get small donors to give us money, we tend to use crowdfunding. So crowdfunding began about 20 years ago by the woman whose name I never remember. It's embarrassing, but who started Indiegogo. And she had some friends who had a music quartet, and she wanted to help them raise money. But back then, 25 years ago, it actually wasn't even legal for an individual to go and raise money. You had to have a nonprofit. I don't know if any of you realize this, but you had to have a nonprofit. And when she started Indiegogo, she was actually offering people to break the law. And so she raised, you know, $10,000 or something like that for this music quartet. She put together Indiegogo, and here we are. I think it's about 30 years later. And what has happened as a result is that the law has changed. The law has changed so that it's now perfectly legal for any individual to raise money. So I Joanne, can go and raise money from people to do something, and in our case, to make a film. And it's perfectly legal. And there are lots of platforms that allow us to do that. Kickstarter has become so popular that people use the word Kickstarter when they mean crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is the generic term, and Kickstarter is a particular platform. I have now done over 40 crowdfunding campaigns, successful crowdfunding campaigns with my clients. I tend to encourage them to use Indiegogo. I have a couple here and there who use Kickstarter, and I think it just takes a certain personality to use Kickstarter. Kickstarter is what's called an all or nothing. So if you want to raise 10,000 on Kickstarter and you raise 9,500, you get nothing. You have to actually make your goal. If you use Seed and Spark, then Seed and Spark, you have to raise 80% of your goal, or you get nothing. So it's kind of a mixture. And on Indiegogo, you keep everything. And it's been very, very useful for my clients, because I have young people who work with me and I have older people who work with me. And often what will happen with the older people is that their donors will say, oh, I want to give you a check. And I say, don't let them give you a check, do it online, but it happens. So I had a client last year, and it wasn't his first crowdfunding campaign that he had done even with me, but he raised about $25,000, I think. And about 2,000 of it was online, but he got all the rest in checks. So, when I use crowdfunding, I'm using crowdfunding for the money, yes, but I'm using it for marketing, for visibility, and for getting that momentum going of getting that train out of the station. Donald, GoFundMe is not appropriate for film. GoFundMe is perfect if you have, I was giving a year ago to a friend of mine who was traveling to India for this very, very, very strange and unusual surgery. So she was raising money for that. So GoFundMe is really good for, my house burnt down, send me some money. So it's good for those kind of personal things, but it's not appropriate for filmmakers. Filmmakers need to use, as I said, Indiegogo to me is the one that most of my clients use. I've had a couple of clients use Kickstarter because they have a very, very, very competitive mindset. And so Kickstarter is really good for them. And they know they're going to raise that money. Otherwise, there's no point in doing Kickstarter. So crowdfunding is great, though, because it really can get the ball rolling. And with my clients, if my clients are super beginners, they've never made a short film before, they've never raised any money before, we start at $12,000. We raised $12,000 to make a short film. And my feature film clients, we start at 20 or 25. I have a very, very specific methodology that I teach for crowdfunding. And it's a very low-key methodology. It's not about, posting 5 posts a day and all of that stuff that people do and kill themselves working 60-hour weeks to do a crowdfunding campaign. We don't do that. All I can say is I spent 7 years in bed, so you don't have to. I'm really about sustainability, about doing the, having a maximum effect with a minimum effort. So I teach a lot of strategy about crowdfunding, about that. I've had various, it's a minority, but I've had filmmakers raise, we did $38,000, we did $52,000, we did $67,000 twice. So we have raised larger amounts of money. But if I wanted to raise 100 or more thousand, I'd probably hire a crowdfunding team. But the problem with hiring crowdfunding people who are out there who say that they do crowdfunding is you have to be very careful. There are people who will take your money from you and not do anything. And the other thing is that even when you're working with a crowdfunding campaign expert, is that, well, I'm an expert, but I just mean that I don't do those higher sums of money is because my clients haven't got to the point where they have the fundraising capacity, that's a term from traditional fundraising, to raise over $100,000. But we work on coming up with what that number is. What is their fundraising capacity? And that depends on the number of people you know and the number of people that you communicate with. It depends on, if you've raised money before, though those 2 people who raised $67,000 and never done any fundraising before. One of them had never made a film before. So it just depends. But a lot of times filmmakers make the mistake of saying, well, I need $300,000, so I'm going to do a crowdfunding campaign for $300,000. But they don't have the fundraising capacity to raise $300,000. This lady wrote to me one time, she sent me an email. And this is another common error, is that people think, oh, I'll set up a crowdfunding campaign and I'll send it to anybody, So I never knew this woman. I didn't know anything about her. And she sent me this email out of the blue saying, will you give to my campaign? And normally I wouldn't even take the time to open it, but for whatever reason, I opened it. And it said she was trying to raise $500,000 and $500,000. And what was already in the campaign was $50. And I really don't understand how this is a possibility, but anybody who has never made a film before knows that that crowdfunding campaign is not going to work. And I don't know why, but I took a moment. I wrote to her and I said, this campaign cannot work. And she wrote me back and she said, why? I was just like, I don't know. That would be a longer conversation. But so one of the reasons that I choose these more modest numbers, although Shane, you are correct, $25,000 is, excuse my French, a shitload of money. That is a lot of money. But what I think filmmakers are thinking is, oh, well, I need $500,000, so I'm going to do a crowdfunding campaign. But they don't have the fundraising capacity to do that. So I have my clients raise more modest numbers because we're not thinking, well, I'm going to raise this money and this is going to be the entire budget of my film. What we're thinking is this, I'm going to raise this money from crowdfunding. This is going to be a beginning to my fundraising campaign. This is going to be a way to get that train to start building up some momentum, and we'll keep going after that. So going back to my original individual donors, the next type of donors are major donors. And so in the traditional fundraising world, which is, you know, where I come from, where I learned fundraising, major donors are the people who are giving. Now, the amount that you might call a major donor might be different to the next person. So for some people, a major donor would be $500. For some people, it would be $1,000. For some people, it would be $5,000. I have more than one client for whom a major donor is $25,000. So a major donor is somebody who gives a significant amount of money, is a significant amount of money to you. And so what we do in my methodology, what we do is we start that crowdfunding campaign, and we're looking for the small donors. The average gift that people give on crowdfunding is $50 or $75. And we're looking for those smaller donors. If you think about fundraising as a pyramid, the smaller donors are at the bottom. So maybe we get 50 people who give us $20. And then we get 25 people who give $100. And then we get, so it keeps going up like that. And so when you get to the top of the pyramid, to whatever a major donor is for you, we put more face-to-face time into those major donors. So we maybe we have coffee with them, maybe we have lunch with them, maybe we have a phone call with them. So we're looking for major donors, and we can start doing that as soon as we start our crowdfunding campaign. So the major donors are the first major donors that we will ever get will probably come out of that crowdfunding campaign. I had a client one time. She was very young. She was about 20, and she and her friend were making their first short film, and it was an animated short. I don't know if anyone here is an animated filmmaker, but my hats are off to all filmmakers because filmmaking is awfully hard. Steve, yes, animated. But animation is so much harder. I'm very excited because right now, between March and April, I have my first client who is completing an animated feature film. So, and he was actually the one who started out with a $52,000 crowdfunding campaign. So they were making their first short. It was animated, turned out beautiful. It was just fabulous. But they were raising $25,000. And when I looked at their numbers, when I looked at their fundraising capacity, I did not think they could make $25,000. So I suggested 20. So we did a crowdfunding campaign for $20,000, and they landed 50% of their $25,000 on the first day of their campaign. It was just astounding. And so they raised the $20,000. But in that, in all the people who gave to their crowdfunding campaign, there were a couple of people that they didn't know. And so they did some research. They figured out these two people, knew them through this organization that they were involved in, and they contacted them. And they, those two donors eventually gave $2,500 each, and we got to the 25. So they got the 25 to make their short, beautiful animated short. And that particular client is still, she's working with one of my other clients now, a client who's making an animated feature. She just a few months ago had a premiere for the short that it's going to become this animated feature, 12-minute short. And anyway, so she's on her way, still working in animation, and now working with a very, very skillful filmmaker. So which actually, I have never told that story before about her now working with another client of mine. But the fact is that when I think about her original $20,000 crowdfunding campaign, it has really moved her career forward. So it helped her make her short, helped her get her first major donors, helped her get onto a career in filmmaking and animation. So what I often do is use the crowdfunding campaign to get to the major donors. With major donors, I also have clients who have raised money from major donors who never did a crowdfunding campaign. It's not like it's a necessary thing. I much prefer it when my clients agree to do a crowdfunding campaign, because it's just such a great way to start fundraising, and there's just so many lessons in it. But I do have clients who've raised money just by sending an email to a list of people. I have a client who raised $50,000 last year that way, going towards her $200,000 film. Again, it's all this sort of some money here, some money there, which I think is another fundamental thing that I'm saying, that there are all these different types of fundraising, and the more types that you can use, the more types you can tap into, the better. If you're making your first short, you probably don't need anything more than crowdfunding. But as you move into features, you may very well have to use multiple ways of fundraising. So the next one is that, Donald, I don't really want to go off into proof of concepts. I just saw one of my clients this week. We were both at the National Association of Television Programming Executives Conference, NATPE. And she said to me, well, you told me not to make a proof of concept. I was like, yeah, I don't like them. And she said, well, I think it really helped us raise the money. And I was like, yeah, you could be right. But I personally am not very into proof of concepts, but people certainly use them and they work. I just prefer spending the money on the film. That's my take. But one of my clients reminded me she did it, and she thinks that it helped her raise money. Major donors, we don't have to necessarily go to them through crowdfunding, but I personally see them as very interlinked. And then you get to a point where I have a client who has a list now of 2,500 donors. Maybe 100 of them are major donors. And so as a filmmaker, over time, you can continue building that list. I think one of the central mistakes I see filmmakers make is to say, oh, I did a crowdfunding when I was a beginner and now I don't want to do it again. I think it's a mistake, because to me, as somebody said earlier, $25,000 would be really great. $25,000 is a lot of money. So it's a useful practice, and it can also help move you to getting major donors. So I'm just checking the time. I'm definitely going to leave time for questions and answers. So we'll have time to talk. I'm going to go through go to the next one. So the next type of fundraising that I like to talk about is foundations. And so, I would love to know if there are any documentary filmmakers in the audience. I know Feline is a documentary filmmaker. Any other of you documentary filmmakers? Oh, I can see a hand raised, but I can't see the name. Is that Daniel? Maybe that's Daniel. Donald. So one of the things that's really important for documentary filmmakers to make is to really get to know about the world of foundations. So foundations are nonprofit entities that are set up to give money to a community benefit. Usually each foundation sets up, several different community benefits. Steve, I don't know what you mean by how do you keep those emails from going to the spam box? I don't know. Steve, do you want to explain your question? I don't really understand that question that you wrote a couple of minutes ago. Steve, where are you? I don't know what that means. That question.
Steve is typing.
Steve is typing. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go back to foundations. So foundations always have a list of their mandates for what they want to give money to, right? So one foundation might give money to cancer research and children's education and homeless advocacy. Another foundation might give to justice reform, children's education, and sports. I don't know, but every foundation has what they give to, and usually you can do research and you can find what the foundation is interested in. And so if you're making a documentary, and several fiction films will fall into a category that is useful, that is of interest to foundations. But think about foundations as entities that give money to support a community benefit. So with films, often, less and less so today, but often foundations will publicize that they don't give money to media. And this was very, very true 20 years ago. Many, many foundations would say in big capital letters, "We do not fund media." And I think that a lot of it was because they just didn't understand, So what would be confusing to them would be, for example, one person comes in with a film about homelessness and they have a budget of $25,000, and another person comes in with a budget of a film about homelessness and it's $250,000, and another person comes in with a film about homelessness and it's $1 million, and they're like, we don't understand. So I think they were just genuinely confused about how much does it cost, and we don't understand, Things have progressed and there's more understanding about filmmaking today than maybe 20 years ago. But the foundations will often be very interested once your film has finished. So when your film has finished, you may very well fit into one of the categories that they're interested in, benefiting the community with, but then they can understand it. They don't have to think about, well, how much does it cost to make a film? But they can think about, well, I'm showing this film in 12 high schools, one high school a month for the next 12 months, and I'm going to charge $3,000 each time I do that screening, and I'm going to do a Q&A, and then I'm going to teach the kids about whatever the topic is. So foundations are going to be very interested in the what's called impact today. Again, 20 years ago, it was called audience development. Then it was called audience engagement. And now it's called impact. And so what that means is who is going to be watching this film? And this is a very much maybe the word is proactive. I've never used that word before, but this is where the filmmaker is thinking about, well, who do I get this film out to? Who needs to see this film? I think often filmmakers are a bit passive about this, and they're like, oh, well, you know, if I get my film on PBS, then, you know, PBS will find an audience for me. And that's not even how PBS thinks. You know, PBS is thinking, well, we want to show your film because we want your audience, and we want you to bring your audience to the film. So when we're thinking about who is going to watch our film, all of that comes under impact. And I have a client right now. She's a very, very experienced filmmaker. Actually, I owe her a phone call. I'm going to write her name down. But she's making her 13th feature film, and it deals with the January 6th riots. And it's about a very, very liberal, very left-wing public defender who's worked in Washington, D.C. her whole life, has always defended the poorest of the poor, immigrants, farm workers, people who are poor, uneducated, and those kind of things. And she was asked to defend a couple of January 6th rioters, and she was like, oh, hell no. And then she realized, but wait a minute, you know, they didn't commit any crime, any violent crimes. And so she chose to defend these two people. And it's really about these conversations between people who have been really radicalized on the right, and then this woman who's very liberal on the left. She's ended up on Fox News. She's ended up on these right-wing podcasts. And so the film is really about dialogue and people who are very opposed meeting, and really, you know, it's a very loving story. So the impact campaign of this film is going to cost as much as the film. And it's designed to be shown in venues with people who are on the right and on the left and have dialogue. And so we're raising about $160,000 for impact for that film. I have another film that we've just gone past the $1 million mark in the fundraising for that. Is a feature documentary, but we're also raising millions of dollars for a series that will go along with it, which is really all about impact. So impact and who sees the film is really important. And then another example I like to give, years ago, I was hired to make a video to help persuade the commissioners in Miami Beach to vote for a line item for arts in Miami Beach. Before then, any arts funding in Miami came from Miami-Dade County, which is the larger, regional entity, and there was no specific funding for the arts in Miami Beach. So I made this video. It was about 5 minutes long. It had many of the Miami Beach arts organizations in the video. And we had this commission meeting where the vote was going to happen. There was the mayor, and it's maybe 9 commissioners. I can't remember the exact number. And we showed this video. And when I saw a couple of the commissioners wiping tears from their eyes, I knew we had won. And so the vote passed unanimously. That line item was put in the budget. And that 5-minute video that I made has since then been worth millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that have gone, millions every year, to Miami Beach artists. And so that is about impact. That 5-minute video that I made had impact. It's had multi-millions of dollars worth of impact. And so it isn't necessarily that your film is to get to an audience, a big audience or something like that. But the impact that it has on that audience is what we're really talking about. And that's something that you can separately raise money for. And foundations are a great place for that. My mentor, Murray Warshawski, who wrote a very important book about fundraising for documentaries called Shaking the Money Tree. I used to bring him to Miami Beach to teach. And he would say that foundations were his favorite way of fundraising. Actually, and then the next year I'd bring him, he'd say it's individuals. And the next year he'd come and say it was foundations. So it would go back and forth. But foundations are a really great way for you to raise money. So the next type is corporate sponsorship. Oh, did I ever write? I didn't write foundations, did I? In the thing, foundations. Foundations. The next one is corporate sponsorship. Corporate sponsorship. Now, corporate sponsorship can be very difficult, very, very difficult, because the money that we get from corporate sponsorship is usually from the marketing department. So the corporation, maybe they have ads on TV, but so we have to, as filmmakers, we have to be able to show them how investing in our film and having their name on it or the product placement, whatever it is going to be more valuable to them than putting their ads on the television. So once again, we're back to what is the business case? How do we show the corporation that they're going to get more bang for their corporate buck than just putting an ad on TV? And so if you're making your first feature film, it's going to be difficult for you to be able to show that more people are going to see your film and see their product in the film or see their name on the film than if they spent their money in traditional advertising. But as you go along in your career, you'll be able to show that. Again, you need to have distribution before you make the film in order for a corporate sponsor to be interested. The other place that corporate sponsors are very interested, I know I was on Clubhouse yesterday, and we had I had a very long-term client of mine and then a brand new client of mine who are both making movies with the goal of getting them on PBS. And the one of them, we just raised last year $65,000 to take his feature film, which had already been out for 5 years, and take it to a new level nationally on PBS. And as a result, it's now being screened thousands and thousands of times all around the country. Now, with the next film that he's making, he is able to say to a corporate sponsor, in the PBS world, the language is underwriting. He is able to show that he has had 280 million viewers. And so if you're a corporation and you want to be able to get your name in front of people, having your name on a PBS documentary or feature film is a really good thing. I'm trying to find a link to Clubhouse so I can send it, but it's difficult for me to do it while I'm talking as well. Clubhouse is an audio platform, and we get on and talk about filmmaking every week. Let's see if I can get Emily to send it to me. Send me a link to my Clubhouse house. I'll see if she can send it to me. But if you think about like a Facebook group, you might be a member of a group and people put posts. Clubhouse is that, but live and on audio. I really love Clubhouse. It blew up during COVID when people couldn't go out, and we'd have hundreds of people in a room. Now it's much quieter than that. And every week on Tuesdays at 12:30 Eastern, I do a Clubhouse room just for an hour and a half, and people can come and ask questions about the business of film. We just have a lot of fun. A lot of my clients come as moderators. A lot of producers come who have, serious experience, so you can ask people questions. So these two clients of mine were talking. One has a lot more experience with PBS than the other one. The other one is just now beginning that journey. But in PBS, it's called underwriting. But, you know, the one client who now can say 280 million people have seen his film, he's going to corporations. And so far in the past, he's been able to raise $25,000, $15,000 gifts. Now he'll be able to raise bigger gifts. The other producer who's just starting out down that road, he's already got a letter of intent from a local PBS station. They have 3 million viewers. They partner with another station in Toronto that has 5 million viewers. So he can already show corporations those kind of numbers. The other way to think, though, about corporate sponsorship is on a smaller level, is that when you're making a film, you can have companies sponsor your company so that you can save money on your film. So you could have a restaurant, for example, give you their restaurant so that you can shoot in there and have a really nice production value in your film and not charge you money. Somebody who has a shop and you use the shop. You could have a corporation loan you a car that you could use in a shoot. So there are lots of ways that you can have corporations give you product that will increase the production value of your film. And that's also corporate sponsorship. That's also corporations supporting you and cutting the costs for you for your films. So, you know, I was just talking to somebody yesterday who gave me a whole long list. Oh, that's right. She's shooting a documentary series and they're shooting it at a resort. So again, you can imagine the production values are going to be really nice. It's at this really high-end resort. And of course, the resort gets the advertising, they get the marketing. You'll see that on a lot of reality shows. If you read the credits at the end, which I hope you all read the credits always of films and series, because I'm always reading the credits because I'm looking at how they paid for things, you know? And so you'll see on a lot of like reality shows, quiz shows, the resort, the airline, the clothes, all of these things have been given for free. Oh, I just got a thing saying I was not connected to the internet, so I hope I am. I hope you can all hear me. So corporate sponsorship is a little bit tricky, but there's lots and lots of different levels of corporate sponsorship. So, you know, don't necessarily think, oh, if I can't get a corporation to give me $200,000, then there's nothing for me to do. You can be working at many, many different levels for corporate sponsorship. Maybe it's providing a meal for your crew. Maybe it's providing drinks for the whole shoot. Maybe it, you know, that kind of level. I'm always thinking again about a sort of mix, a funding mix. You know, I see that narrative filmmakers think that crowdfunding is the only kind of fundraising they can do. Documentary filmmakers think that grants are the only kind of fundraising they can do. But narrative and documentary filmmakers can use all these types of fundraising. So that's what I like people to, that's the message I like people to get. So the next type of fundraising is grants. And well, as I was just saying, so documentary filmmakers think this is the only type of fundraising. And not only that, but they think that documentary film grants are the only kind of fundraising. If you Google now, if you Google documentary film grants, you'll see lists of documentary film grants. And they're great, you know, they're great. And I have a client who won a $100,000 film grant for her documentary about missing and murdered Indigenous women. Various film grants, but I have another client who is Austrian who won a grant for $75,000. She just got it very recently from Austria, but there are many, 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 many other types of grants other than film grants. So one of the big errors that I see filmmakers make is that when they do that Googling and start looking for grants, they'll put film grants, but there are actually other grants. So the way I like you to start thinking about this is start looking locally. So where are you all located? Maybe you can write in the chat. Where are you all based physically? Put it in the chat so we can see. I'm in Miami. Miami. Where else are you based? Where else are you based? Royal. Where's Royal? North Carolina. Oh, I have a client making films in North Carolina. Is there a genre of films you wouldn't be willing to collaborate on? I don't know about that. Porn, I guess. Arkansas, Indiana. Oh, you are all over the place. Okay. So I have a client in Indiana. She is in, oh gosh, what city is she in? But so the first place we look is the city she's in. So Shane, where in Indiana are you? And Steve, where in Arkansas are you? That's already Evansville. Okay. So I'm going to use Shane as an example. Because I've never been to Evansville, Indiana. So the first thing I would do is I would look and see, does Evansville have any arts funding? And if they have any arts funding at all for artists, it won't say film, it'll just say art, you know. And so the first place I would look would be, does Evansville have funding? And the best thing about that kind of funding is that it's usually annual and you can usually apply every year and you can get it every year. And it might be small, it might be $5,000, it might be $10,000, but you can apply every year. And I think you can see when I talk about this funding mix idea, that, you know, if you do a crowdfunding and you get some money from a corporation or some product from a corporation, and you get your $5,000 or your $10,000 locally, that could be very helpful. The next level is regional, and then the next level is state. So where I am in Miami, Miami is one of the best funded places in the country for arts. I suspect only New York is better funded than Miami, and that's just because New York has been doing it for a lot longer. But so if you're based in New York, there's a lot available. If you're based in Miami, there's a lot available, and it's just about leadership. And you know, he just retired, but Michael Spring, who was the head of the Cultural Affairs Department for decades, just was unbelievable here. So it's really, you know, leadership and getting money. In Miami, we have 5 or 6 major arts institutions that have been built in the last 10 years. It's unheard of. Most communities, if they have one major arts institution in the last 10 years, that would be good. We have 5 or 6. So it's just incredible what's happened in Miami. So start at the city level, and then we have Miami-Dade County. If I was a bit further north, I had to run up to Broward County as the next county up. They have their own arts funding. I was mentioning Miami Beach now has its own arts funding. So depending on where you live, there are different places that you can get funding from. And then the next level would be the state of Florida. The very first grant that I ever got was an arts grant, arts fellowship from the state of Florida. Grants are divided up into different types. So a fellowship is money that you get, which you can spend on anything. I got $5,000 with my first grant, and I could spend it on my rent if that's what I needed to spend it on. most arts grants are project-based. So you would tell them, my film is $100,000 and I'm applying for this $20,000 for, this piece. But arts grants are defined geographically. And then many years ago, I was the arts administrator for a larger regional program that was run by, back to foundations, it was run by the Rockefeller Foundation, the Andy Warhol Foundation, the NEA, which is the National Endowment for the Arts, and another one. And they had pooled their money and they were looking for interdisciplinary arts projects around the country. And they had a regional one for the Southeast. And there are some grants for the Southeast, or there's an organization for Southern filmmakers that gives grants to filmmakers in the South. So you might find a regional one like that. And this particular entity realized that they had this Southeast region and they got 0 applications from Florida. So they gave us the administration of Florida, and we were administering Florida. So sometimes you'll see opportunities at a larger level than a state level. Actually, I have a client who has an organization called Northeast Filmmakers, and it covers several states. So all of those opportunities, they may not be called film grants at all. They may be called arts grants. They'll be divided into fellowships and project-based grants. And there's another type of grant, which is sometimes called technical assistance or professional development. And it'll just be a small grant. When I was in San Francisco, there was one there that was San Francisco and LA, where you could apply for $750. And I had clients apply for that I had a client who used it to go to a conference, filmmaking conference, networking. She got it for that. I had clients who applied for it to pay for me. And so, they put it towards their fee working with me. So technical assistance or professional development is for you to further your career. It's not for a project, it's for you to further your career. That's a very common one. So look in your local area, your city, your county, and your state, and possibly even your region, and see what's available. There are grants for film, and those exist as well, but I don't want to say but, because that sounds negative. They are highly competitive, and I just want you to know that there's more available. And then I just mentioned, so at the federal level, there are grants. The National Endowment for the Arts, they give grants. One of my clients, we wrote a grant a few years ago. We got $25,000 from the NEA. And then during COVID, they sent him a check for $25,000 because they said, well, we're not doing grants this year. So they just sent another check for $25,000, which I thought was amazing. The National Endowment for the Arts. And that's probably about the highest, biggest grant level you would want to try for. The next levels, the NEA, I have one client, we just put in a grant for $3.3 million to the National Science Foundation. And then another client has a $1 million or so grant to the National Endowment for the Humanities. But both of those filmmakers are at a point in their careers where they've made multiple features. He's had multiple films at Sundance. Anyway, they're known in their field, and they have teams. More importantly than how good they are as filmmakers or how mature they are as filmmakers is that they have teams. Those National Endowment for the Humanities or National Science Foundation grants are behemoths of work. We worked on the National Science Foundation one for a year. So they're sort of for further along, but there is federal money at that kind of level for films, which I think is amazing, but there you go. We don't in America have we don't have government funding. In a sense, we don't have government funding for films. Every single other country in the world has grants for films, and there are some countries that are big into it. Canada is one, huge into funding films, because most countries in the world really believe that, you know, having films come out of their countries is really useful for them in terms of marketing their countries and things like that. But America doesn't see the need. So, but we do have federal grants for films. For TV series, you have to check the grants. I do want to say a little word about TV series, which is that, like, I just came from the NatP, which is all about television series. But the mistake that I think most filmmakers make is trying to make a series far too early in their careers. It's best to start with feature films and, you know, cut your teeth on feature films before trying to make a series. So just in a general sense, I want to say, you know, make a few features first. And no, Shane, if you're not a resident of Canada, then you're not going to be able to get that grant. But you can partner with a producer in Canada. And again, you just have to look at the fine print, because all of these all of these grant opportunities have, you know, what I teach my clients to do is to eliminate themselves as fast as possible. Because one of the drawbacks that I see, particularly with documentary filmmakers, is they spend all their time writing grants. And I'm like, no. Again, I'm all about efficiency, sustainability. And so I was just talking to a filmmaker the other day, and she said, well, you know, we applied for some grants. We knew we weren't quite right. And I was like, oh, hell no. You know, I'm never going to write a grant unless I'm 100% sure that I am the perfect person to get that grant. Before I got sick, I had a 2-to-1 success rate with grants, which is sort of unheard of. But anyway, so for every 2 grants, I got 1, you know, and my boss was always on my case to write more grants. And I'm like, why do you want me to write more grants? I've already beaten the goal by 3 times. And I'm doing it by writing fewer grants, but more perfect opportunity, more perfect match. That's what I mean. A more perfect match with the grants. So never apply to something that you're like, I don't really quite fit this, but I'll try it anyway. Waste of time. You've got to be a perfect match for that grant. So Shane, no, you're not going to apply to Canada, but you could get a Canadian co-production partner, and then you can apply. What is my last one out of 7 grants? I just lost my little list. I have a little cheat sheet. Oh, special events. Every time I talk about special events, I have to be honest. I hate special events. And that is because I really burned out on special events. You know, back then when I worked for Miami-Dade Community College years ago, and we did 65 events a year. I was in charge of all of them. And it was like, I did 2 years of that. I was burned out. So, and then the other thing is, back then I didn't know that I was an introvert. It wasn't until I met Murray Warshawski, he pointed out to me that I was an introvert, and I didn't know that. So introverts get their energy from being alone. Extroverts get their energy from being around people. And so if you put an introvert into 65 special events a year, they're going to burn out. That's what happened to me. But there is one type of special event that I like to talk about. Again, Murray Warshawski, he's got a complicated name, I'll write it. Murray Warshawski. he has written a book called House Parties, and house parties are where you have a wealthier friend who maybe has a nice home, and you ask them to do an event for you. And the next most important thing is that you ask them to invite their friends. So when I was talking before about fundraising capacity, we all have our own fundraising capacity. You know, maybe 20 people, maybe 100 people, maybe 5,000 people. But each of us has our own fundraising capacity, and house parties are a great way to increase the numbers of people in our network. So you have a friend who has a nice home, you have them invite their friends to come to a fundraising event. So let's say they invite 100 people and 20 people show up. Those 20 people know that they are there for the purpose of fundraising, and they are there for the purpose of giving money to a film. So they've already self-selected before they arrive. And Murray told me, they had a house party where 20 people came, 19 people gave, what was it? Because they raised nearly $10,000. That's right, 19 people gave $10,000. I haven't had a successful house party like that, but I love the idea. So they raised $190,000 at one event. I definitely have had clients raise $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 at a house party. And I like it because it doesn't cost anything, especially if the host pays for the food, the wine and cheese or whatever, and you just have to show up and make a presentation. If you have a little video, show 2 or 3, 4 minutes of video, give a little talk, and make the ask. But if you want to read more about this particular methodology, it's called House Parties by Murray Warshawski. I love house parties. The kind of special events that people do, like a party, or not I shouldn't say party, because I'll just talk about house parties, but a special event where you sell tickets and you do this and to raise money. I don't like those things. And what I see is that people spend a lot of money and don't raise any money, and that's why I don't like them. I'm just all about, if I'm going to put in any effort, then I want to get money back. That's the reason for fundraising, but not to put effort and to spend money and not get money back. That's just not good use of your time. So the last type of fundraising that I want to talk about is sales. And so sales is, to me, the most important thing that you want to be thinking about when you're making your feature films, not shorts. Feline, were you trying to ask a question? Is that why you came up on stage? Feline, you can unmute. Oh, so she went back onto the audience. Okay, I thought you were going to ask a question. So the most important thing that I would say about sales is that I would love it if filmmakers would think about sales before they make their film. And it may not be that you have distribution before you make your film. It may not be that you know how to get distribution. It may not be any of those things, but I just want you to start thinking about distribution, thinking about sales before you make your film. This client who I was hanging out with last week, we had so much fun. When she started working with me, she was planning on raising $60,000 to make her first feature film. And she told me it was a film about homelessness, and it was a drama. And I said to her, well, given that this is a micro-budget film. Oh, hi, Feline. Thank you. I can't believe you're still learning stuff from me from my classes. That's great. Now I just lost my train of thought. Okay, so she was planning on raising $60,000 to make her film, and it was a drama, and it dealt with homelessness. And I told her that I didn't think I could get distribution for that film. And this is why. It's a micro-budget film with no names, and it's a drama. And so what I love to let filmmakers know is that if you're making your first feature film or your second or your third feature film, and you want to make a drama or a comedy, and you're making it micro-budget and you have no names, I probably cannot get distribution for that film because there's really no way for that film to rise above the saturation of dramas and comedies. The only way that you can really rise above the saturation with a drama or comedy is if you have enough money to hire a name. So when she told me she was going to spend $60,000 on her film, which I thought was fine, and it was a drama, and it was about homelessness, I was like, I don't think I can get distribution for that film. So, and she would completely agree with me today, with me saying this, is that that's what I call anti-marketing. So marketing is when you try and sell your movie to get people to watch it. Anti-marketing is when you do everything in your power to make sure people don't want to watch it. And she would 100% agree with me today that that's what she was doing back then. I'm making a drama about homelessness. And so anyway, I read her script and I was like, this isn't a drama, it's a thriller. And she said, well, what are you talking about? It's a drama. I said, well, you know, it's about this woman and she ends up homeless. And then there's a scene where she gets beaten up by this group of people and she ends up in the hospital, but we don't even know she's in the hospital. We think she might be dead. And then we find out she's in the hospital. We find out she survived. And then she escapes from the hospital so that she can go to this special place where she can get this gun so she can go and rescue this child. That's a thriller. So she made the film, she took it to AFM, and she got 15 offers of distribution. And what I would say is that if she had taken the film that she was trying to anti-market, she would have had 0 offers of distribution. And so now she's really into marketing and she really gets it. And she was there selling her second film, which is a documentary about flair bartending. And then her third film, which she's going to shoot in March, is going to be a horror film. So she's got the idea. And this is the idea that I think that filmmakers kind of miss, which is, as a filmmaker, you want people to watch your film. I believe that we all make films so that people watch them, and we want people to watch them. But for whatever reasons, and I think it's usually to do with, I want to be unique, I want to be different, I want to stand out with my uniqueness, and often we do things that end up being anti-marketing. So as I said, she's come a long way and she really gets it now with marketing and sales, and she's super excited. She's already got 200,000 people who are following her Facebook page for her third film that's coming out in March, hasn't even shot a second of it yet. And she's just, got it. It's like 200,000 people are going to be wanting to see this film when it comes out. She's still got a few more months to do marketing on it. Then when she starts shooting, she's going to be marketing, and then she's going to have more than 200,000 people ready for that film when it comes out. So, as I said, I just want you to start thinking about sales and marketing before you make your film, and start thinking about who is the audience for this film and who do I want to see this film. I see your question there, Steve. And what I would like to do actually is pretty much stop and open it up for questions and see with this fabulous technology that we have, if anybody would like to jump up and ask a question. It's much more fun than me just reading them out of the chat. But yeah, jump up and ask a question. So Steve, to your question, do you use a pitch deck with distributors? No. That's the answer to that question. No. I do teach my clients how to do pitch decks, and they're very specifically for investors, and they're very specifically about money. But no, I've never used a pitch deck with a distributor. There's Steve, yay.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'd like to thank you for coming. For those that could not come today, we have recorded it, so be sure to pass it around. I'd like to thank Joanne for being here. If anybody has any questions, just raise your hand, just like in class. Hey, Shane, I will put you up here if you raise your hand.
Yeah, it would be so fun to hear your voices now that we've got to know you. Shane, before you ask your question, can you tell me, where you're at as a filmmaker?
Yeah. Hey, how are you?
Hi.
I've been producing for about 15 years. I took a good 7 years off. So 8 years maybe with the break. Mostly it's micro budget horror films is what I do. So usually anything, the most I'm trying to raise now is a $25,000 budget for a 4-person or 4-cast member, one location horror thriller, home invasion thriller.
Mm-hmm.
So but I was kind of curious about thank you about the pitch decks as well. There's, I guess, in my opinion, I think there's multiple different pitch decks for like email, for person. Do you tailor all of them usually the same, or do you, I guess, keep it all the same, or do you tailor it to the specific? I don't know.
Somebody's typing super loud.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead. Tailor it to the what?
Do you tailor it to the, I guess, the audience? So like email pitch decks, do you tailor it just strictly to the email that you're sending, or compared to meeting somebody and having an in-person? Hopefully that makes sense.
No.
It doesn't?
No. I mean, it does make sense.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. But what I'm always focusing on with my clients is
okay, that typewriter is annoying. I'm sorry.
Loud. Julian, can you mute yourself while you're waiting, because the typing is so loud? Julian and Isaac. There, they did it. Yes.
I'm gonna mute myself to listen to the answer.
You don't mute yourself, Shane. So I find that for my clients, it's very, 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 very difficult for them to move from where they start working with me, which is what I call being a filmmaker storyteller, over to a business person. That's the struggle that they're going through. Is that your background?
What now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and mute yourself. I'm sorry. And so the work that I find is to get them to the point where they can really have a business conversation with an investor, which is not the same as telling the story of my film to an investor. And so when they really catch on that that's what they're doing, that they're really preparing themselves to have a business conversation with an investor, they have now by then created a deck that's really about business. And then I don't feel that we have to change it. There's nothing really no reason we need to change it. I suggest not necessarily sending a pitch deck on its own. I suggest that people have a meeting. And so it's either in person or via Zoom, where they can go through the pitch deck with the person, because there's an educational component, I find. Even if it's somebody who is used to films or anything like that, but there's an educational component about the business. And so nearly every pitch deck I see, and I have a colleague who I think is great, and he now charges people money to create pitch decks for them. I know somebody else I've met who's a really nice guy who charges money for people to make pitch decks. And as far as I can see, all these pitch decks are very nice looking, but they have no business in them. They have nothing about money. As far as I'm concerned, that's why I'm creating a pitch deck. I'm creating a pitch deck to show an investor how that investor is going to get a return.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, thank you very much.
I'm going to put my contact information, Shane, so we can talk another time.
I'd love to.
Yeah. Julian and Isaac Ward.
Hi.
Hi.
I just have a hypothetical sort of question.
Uh-huh.
If we were to do a feature film, for instance, and it was also sort of done in-house by us, and we didn't really have any big budget actors or voice actors or anything like that, but the whole film was the same forwards and backwards, do you think we could make that into a pitch that would make money, or would that not really work, you think?
So you're saying it goes the same forwards and backwards?
Yeah.
I think that would probably fall into the category that I was suggesting, that people want to be unique rather than thinking about, who is the audience for my film. So,
Sure.
Do you think people would enjoy seeing the same story forwards as backwards?
I guess it might depend on how it's done.
Yeah. I think it would depend on how it's done. Whereas if you said to me, well, I'm making a film about this guy who lives in a small town, and he comes back after being in prison for 3 years, and he wants to get back with his girlfriend, but the guy who sent him to prison is getting in the way. I don't know. And now I'm excited. Right now I want to know. I want to know what's going to happen to this guy. So when you give me that kind of formal approach, it isn't interesting yet. What is the story of your film?
Sure.
Well, that's with the very loud typing. I just don't understand where it's coming from.
It's just me. I'm sorry. I'm writing down what you're saying.
Oh, it's you. You're the typist.
Sorry.
Okay.
I was also guilty of that too.
What's the story? What's the log line?
Sure, right. I don't really have any plan yet for that. I was just kind of like having an idea while we're talking about this. So I haven't really thought too much about that yet.
Yeah, I think that so I think that a mistake that you're making is I'm going to do something that is in a formal sense interesting, but it isn't, I just read this. Do you know Christopher Nolan's Momentum?
I feel like I've heard about that, but I've never, I don't really know that much about it, really.
Well, it was his first film. Am I saying that right? Was it his first film or his second film? Memento. What am I saying? Memento. And it's a very, 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 very super low budget, very experimental film. And, Christopher Nolan has done pretty well for himself, right? But that first film, it's sort of hard to watch, but it's also interesting, very interesting.
Sure.
Really interesting, and it got into Sundance.
Right.
He was just sharing at Sundance. He just, he's getting nominated for Oscars with Oppenheimer, and he's still sharing about how painful it was to have his film get into Sundance and not sell.
Sure.
Get distribution for the film,
Right. Sure.
So he was doing things that were intellectually interesting, but not necessarily captivating. What audiences like is to be able to identify with a character and what that character is going through.
Right.
That's what audiences like.
Sure.
Oh, what's going to happen to this guy now that he got out of prison and now he's in trouble again? That's
right.
what we're interested in.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Great to meet you.
Mhm.
Donald,
Thanks.
what's your question?
See if my camera comes on. There we
Yes.
go. Hi,
Oh,
Joanne.
you're real people. Oh my gosh.
So just a general question I have: when you're putting together a crowdfunding campaign, whether it's on Kickstarter or Indiegogo,
Mhm.
what are, in your opinion, a couple of just the key elements that are going to help your crowdfunding campaign stand out to investors? Because that's always a big question I have. Like, what videos do we put up? What information about the project? Are there just a couple of things that you would recommend are key factors to be included in your crowdfunding campaign?
Well, the first thing that I wanted to say is that you are mixing up donors and investors. And so investors don't give to crowdfunding campaigns unless you can tell me a little bit more. Tell me a little bit more about your crowdfunding campaign.
So the one that I'm working on right now is, excuse me, is going to be for a low budget comedy film, and the budget we're looking to raise is around $10,000, I would say. So yes, I did misspeak there. I meant to say
Yes,
donors, not
yes,
investors.
yes, yes. But it's
So
very, very important because it's such a misunderstanding of what an investor is as opposed to a donor, right?
correct.
So your donors who are going to give you $10,000 are not expecting anything back, right? Whereas an investor, and this is such a different animal, an investor is somebody who's looking to make money on their investment, right? So I just wanted to clarify that. So for your donors, is this your first feature, your first full-length feature?
Oh, well, this one will be a short. It may potentially be expanded into a feature after we complete production on the short. But right now, there's only plans to release it as a short.
Right. Okay. And yeah, I mean, I think $10,000 is a great number to make a short. I'm always stunned when people want to spend too much more money than that. Yeah, good luck. Good luck. It sounds good. Oh no, wait, I didn't answer your question. So your question was, how do we stand out? What videos do we put?
Correct.
I don't believe in any of that. I don't believe in any of that. What I believe in is contacting people and asking them to give. That's what I believe in. So I don't focus on social media for the methodology that I use for my crowdfunding campaigns. I have different strategies that I use. And let's see if I can find, I have a little online class that you can do in just like a few hours. Let's see if I can find a link to that. I'll put it, doesn't look, I have a link to a page that the class is listed on. That's about as close as I can get. But there's a class called Demystifying Crowdfunding, and it's an online class, and it's 3 or 4 hours of work, and it'll really make sure that you get your $10,000. And I would say you can probably get 12. I always start people at 12. But yeah, there's a little class in there that you can purchase for like $99 or something. But yeah, I would say that reaching out to people is what's the most powerful thing. I come from traditional fundraising, and so you reach out to people. You don't put a video up. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Any more questions? Any more questions?
Nope.
The people in the audience are very small. I can't read that. Feline. Oh, yeah. Feline, we saw you up on the stage again for a little bit, Feline. We thought maybe you wanted to ask a question. Shane, go ahead.
So I know you mentioned earlier with comedy and drama, it's hard to, because the oversaturation with it. With horror films, do you see more beneficial from a $100,000 film compared to a $25,000 film by means of distribution and I guess raising capital on that?
You know, the Wi-Fi cut out a few words, so I didn't hear the full question. I heard the 100,000 and 25 or 25,000, but there was something in the middle that got cut out.
Yeah, like, is it, I guess, in your experience, is it easier to raise the $100,000 than it is the 25,000? And also from a distribution standpoint, because of the market is so oversaturated with low budget horror films, is it more, I guess, is it beneficial from a distribution standpoint to have the 100,000 compared to the 25 grand? Does that make sense?
Yeah, there are a lot of questions in all of that. So I don't use the word oversaturation when I say the word horror. It's funny, yesterday my filmmaker liaison, Emily Smart, was commenting on how she and her husband, who's also in film, were amazed at these terrible micro-budget horror films that were on Tubi. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, hey. I said horror fans are notoriously less discerning. Might be the right word. I'm not sure what the right word is. Maybe the right word is horror fans are well known to be just so into horror that they'll watch some things that maybe non-horror fans would just find like, oh gosh, no, I'm not gonna watch that. One day I met this lady who acted in the movie Skinamarink. And Skinamarink was made for $12,000 and has already passed a couple of $1 million, you know. So, but I couldn't watch it, you know. I couldn't get through it again, and so I don't use the word oversaturation when it comes to horror. I use the word oversaturation in comedy and drama, and so when it comes to deciding whether to raise 25,000 or 100,000, you use the word easier to raise $100,000. No, fundraising is hard. And so raising $100,000 is hard. Raising $25,000 is hard. But I think that everybody has their own fundraising capacity. So, you know, if you told me, well, I've raised 25,000 before, I as a coach, I would want you to take a new challenge. And so when I work with my clients and we land on the number, is the language I use, we land on the number, we look into your fundraising capacity and land on the number. I had a client come to me and he was going to make a film for $88,000. And when we went through a variety of questions, it turns out that, you know, I never tell my clients to raise more money, but in his case, I said, you can raise $150,000. With $150,000 now, what we did was we spent $100,000 on production and $50,000 on names, and he has a couple of recognizable faces in his film. So, you know, but usually I'm trying to get my clients to raise less money. But so when you decide on how much you're going to raise, that needs to have a business case. So I could make a business case for a $25,000 movie. I could make a business case for a $100,000 movie, but those are different. I could make a business case for a $2 million movie, but that's different. So there's a business case for every budget, but it's a different business. I don't know if I'm making sense, but So there are lots and lots of factors, is what I would say. There are lots of factors, and so every filmmaker is different. Every film is different. And where you're at in your filmmaking career, which is one of the most important things, I think, which goes into factoring what your fundraising capacity is. That's where I would be landing on that number that you're going to raise. Steve, go ahead.
All right, Joanne. One thing you didn't touch on that I get all the time. Okay, so you've got your fundraising campaign, you've got your goal. What do you give the people giving you money? Perks. What's your most successful thing? Do you give out 10,000 producer credits or associate producer credits? What do your clients do to make themselves successful in that regard?
So you're talking about crowdfunding and the perks. And the only thing that I suggest is that you don't use anything that's not a digital perk. I can see now that it's easier for my clients to accept this concept than it was 5 years ago. Because 5 years ago, everybody wanted to mail T-shirts and they wanted to mail this and that. And I think people have cottoned on. That stuff is hard work and it costs money. I'm just not into spending money. I know fundraising costs money, but I don't want people spending, $500 on buying T-shirts that nobody's going to want as a perk. So I like them to be digital perks, and then they build up. So it might be getting the trailer of the film early, or it might be getting a walk on set. It might be getting invited to the wrap party. It might be getting a credit. But I just said I'm always about efficiency and strategy rather than spending lots of money and trying to raise money by spending money. Julian and Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
What's your question? I'm going to have this be the last question because I feel as though I'm starting to babble.
Actually, we already asked the question. For some reason, the hand is still up there. I don't really know why.
Okay. Well, it was nice to meet you. So I just wanted to say in closing, I did put the thing in the chat before. I'm going to put in the chat my link to my calendar. And what I would like to offer you, especially all of you who say 2 hours you stayed here, is a filmmaker success breakthrough session. And you can pick a time on my calendar and we talk about your specific goals for your filmmaking career, your filmmaking future. And it's completely free of charge, and I would love to talk to you individually. And I put my calendar in the chat, so I look forward to meeting you all. Steve.
Yes, just once again, Joanne, I would like to thank you for doing this for us. This will be our second year, and it has been an ultimate success. Both you and Eric England have really brought some legitimacy to virtual film festivals. And next year we'll have a lot of marketing dollars thanks to Film Freeway. So we're going to give them a shout out, as well as Don from Boathouse Pictures and all our networks, the MTS network. NetIndie, Joanne, is a place for short films. So as people's attention spans get less, they're trying to really push those short films that seem to die after the festival and end up on just YouTube. Also, we have Hulu Binge Pass this year, which makes our festival free to 1 million users.
Wow.
With the library card. But we also have available a distribution opportunity with Hoopla for features as well as shorts. And yes, they pay you per view. I don't know the exact amount. You can email me at stephen@globalfilmexhibition.com. Yes, I know it's a long email. But that's all I got for you guys today. Joanne, good to see you.
Thanks for everything that you're doing. And thanks everybody for coming. You know, I can honestly say that it is the rare filmmaker who's going to sit for 2 hours and listen to a talk about fundraising. So congratulations to all of you. But I do believe that fundraising is what separates, you know, if you really want to be a filmmaker, you're going to have to learn fundraising. And you're going to be fundraising. I mentioned Christopher Nolan recently. Christopher Nolan is out there fundraising for his next film. I can promise you that. So goodbye, everybody. Thanks so much for coming and putting in some efforts into learning the business side of filmmaking. Take care.